Okay, I'll be talking on DMN, the Technology Compatibility Kit, making it real. And what I hope to convince you is that this is an excellent tool that's useful for both the vendors to become compliant with DMN as well as for consumers to have some assurance. It all started way back in bpmNEXT 2016. There was a lot of discussion about decision model and notation. Maybe it was the year for DMN. There were a lot of vendors talking about compliance, already being compliant and supporting it. But I was asking those vendors a number of questions. Can you take a model from vendor A to vendor B? And it was always no. Can you enter a model with different tools the same way? Not necessarily. If you invest in DMN technology, is your investment protected? No. And my question is, what's the point of a standard if everybody's going to implement it differently? Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that every standard is open to interpretation. But another reason is that the compliance level 1 is so low that it's possibly meaningless. The real promise of DMN and any standard is that decision can be modeled, it can be reused everywhere. An investment will be made, it'll be preserved. The people that are trained will be able to return benefit, and the modeled decisions will execute the same everywhere. Now, launching a standard can be tricky. The standards committee produces the spec and releases it to the public. But as I said, that's open to interpretation. Sometimes a freely available support technology that actually implements the standard can be the key to success. So the key is running code, but committees don't make running code. So how do we help the vendors conform to the spec? And that is, we can make a test platform. This allows vendors to demonstrate their capability, and it allows consumers to gain the assurance that they need. So the goal of the TCK is to define a set of standards, cases, to carefully assure the conformance to the spec, to provide tools to run those tests, and to recognize vendors that succeed in running. What we're not trying to do is to extend or enhance the DMN spec. The RTF's already doing that. We don't want to focus on esoteric, unimportant features. We only want to focus on the features that actually exist in one or more implementations. And we don't want to favor any implementation over the other. We want to remain technology neutral. Now, the DMN engine being tested is tested as a black box. There's different runtime environments, and we don't care about that. Everything is files in and files out. As long as the engine produces the correct results, we consider it to be compliant. The DMN model is specified in the DMN interchange format. It's an XML format that comes from the spec. We don't extend that. We use that directly as it's defined. We do validate the models used conform to the spec. Now, we needed a set of input data, name-value pairs, basically, and so we defined an XML format that's easily accessible to everybody, that defines the names and the string types. We did not define any new data types or data bindings. We used the types directly from the model. Same thing with the output, expected results. No new data types. Strings are easy to compare, but we also explained that you need to compare numerics to 8 digits and things like that. So how to know if you have successfully passed the test. Now, you'll need a runner in order to read the files and to submit them to the engine and to compare the results. And many vendors will need to have their own runner for their own technology. The TCK did create a Java-based runner. It's available for free, but it's not required that you use the TCK runner. Finally, the results are in a CSV file, pass-fail, and those can be submitted back to the TCK, and it can be combined together with the others for a consolidated report website. So here's what it looks like all together. These are all the pieces. The TCK focuses on the blue part at the bottom, the DMN models, sample models, the input data, the expected results. And these are all files that are available. They're Creative Commons licensed. They're available on GitHub for free. Those then go into the runner runs them, either ours or yours. The results come out, and we end up with a website that records what each of the results are. So here's an example of what the website looks like. You'll see the results. Over on the left, you're seeing a list of categories. So these are labels that are on the tests themselves. So if you want to look at one category and see which tests worked there, you can. You can see which tests succeeded, which ones failed. And there's also a category for skipped if a vendor feels that that test isn't valid for them. Users can drill down to the next level on a particular category, see exactly which test and what the results for all of that was. So I hope you see that this is an incredibly valuable resource for vendors to demonstrate their compliance to the standard, to provide files to help vendors test for errors and become compliant, and for customers to assess how compliant a vendor is. Okay, so we go right to the demo. And this is a decidedly unsexy demo. If we were doing cars, the two people before me, Bruce and Edson and Eduardo, they would be the cars driving down the curvy mountain roads with the fall leaves being blown aside and all that kind of stuff. My demo's a little bit more like, let's open up the engine and talk about the advantages of using a high-quality motor oil. Okay, so we in this room, we're setting the tone for the industry. I mean, that's it. Look around you. We've got the key players here. We've got, if not all of the vendors, we have most of the vendors. We have all the best analysts are here. In my experience, everybody here has a desire to make excellent products. I mean, that's really it. That's why we're here. That's why we come talk, because it's not about pulling a quick one over on the customer or fooling the customer. I mean, at the end of the day, you want lasting customer relationships, and you do that by having the best products. So that's really what we want to do. And standards play a funny role here. It's kind of difficult because at some point there's going to be a checklist, and you have to, you got to get the checkbox. So we all want the checkbox. But at the end of the day, we don't just want a checkbox. We want a standard that works. And so that's what sort of motivated me to get into all of this. We really would like a set of tests that are strict tests, but they're fair tests, that they really represent useful functionality to people that they really can use. And then if I design a decision model at one point, my investment in that decision model is not lost. I can count on that being useful to me over time. I can bring it to different environments, and I can get my value back from that. Doing this beyond the standard is often a very difficult thing to do. Because like I say, the standard is mostly a written spec. There aren't any sample files that come with it. There could be. But we followed the pattern in the Java community of this technology compatibility kit. So that was some extra effort that's like, this is stuff that's going to help you get it done. And I think we've achieved that. We want to raise the quality of decision models across the whole industry and do it right. And we can do that by working together, and this is something that we all benefit from. In the DMN spec, though, there's a couple things about it. There's a couple levels of compliance. There's level 1, 2, and 3. And what I would like to suggest is that this piece of paper, with some scribbling that I put on it, actually complies to the spec level 1. It's persistent, right here, the piece of paper, it's persistent. There's no requirement that it be stored in any file format. In fact, there's no requirement that it be stored on a computer at all or displayed on a computer screen at all. And the expression language in here, those of you who can see clearly this far, and perhaps you've already noticed, this is implemented in the Vulcan language because I watched way too much Star Trek over the weekend. And I won't read it to you because I don't speak Vulcan. But there's absolutely no requirement on the expression language. It can be a formal language. It can be a completely informal language. It doesn't have to be executable. And this is a level 1 compliant model. Now, I'm not worried about the industry being taken over by people with Sharpies and paper. But here in the BPM community, of course, we expect more. We really do expect the models to be executable, and we really do expect them to be exchangeable. So I'm saying that we need to hold ourselves to that higher standard. We need to be that level 2 or level 3 compliant level. Now, level 2 is a subset of feel, and level 3 is full feel implementation. And I think Edson gave some good examples of why we want to go for level 3 across the industry so that consumers can really bring that everywhere. Now, it's possible I could be persuaded that level 2 is reasonable in some points. I don't know. I'm not an expert in decision modeling. But I think if you invest the effort of implementing the full feel has to be measured in programmer weeks or programmer months. And if you consider the investment that you make in your company and in your product and in your customers, a couple months of programmer time is definitely worth so that we can have something that really works as a real standard. So that's kind of the position I wanted to take on this. Feel. Friendly enough expression language, very interesting thing. I think it was an honest attempt to make an expression language which was better than spreadsheets. I mean, I don't know that I would have done it that way, but after reviewing it and looking at it for a year, it basically looks to me like a good idea. And I think what's more important than anything is that we have a single language that works across all these decision models. So there's an incredible amount of value there. So whether you like feel or whether you like it or whether you don't like it, still there's a huge advantage in having the same thing. I mentioned that everything is files. So here I've got a copy of the files from the GitHub site. And there's a folder for runners, and that's a bunch of Java code which you can use or not use. It doesn't really matter. But the important thing is the test cases. And so we have two folders here, level 2 compliance and level 3 compliance. So the tests are sort of sorted into those levels. I do think everybody should go for level 3, but nevertheless, you can see what they are here. Here's a set of 10 test sets, so to speak. And so the whole idea is we can add more and more tests as time goes on. If I drill down into this, what I'm seeing is first and foremost, a DMN model. So this, before I show you that, let me show you the representation. So I've got a PDF, and this comes, of course, from Trisotech, who's, Denis and his crew have done an excellent job of really supporting this and making it easy to use. So I really want to give my full compliments there. This model is very simple. We have a name variable, and then we have a greeting message. And if we go down to what the greeting message is, it's a very simple expression, hello, in front of the name that comes in. So this is about the simplest model you can have. In the first test, we want something very simple. So if we look at what the DMN file has in it, no big surprise, it looks like this. We've got a decision here. We've got the greeting message. And down here, we've got the input data, which is full name. And no big surprise, here's the expression that says hello, full name. So we don't expect people to be reading these XML files directly. But the point here is that this could be produced by any tool that can generate the DMN model. And so we take these models, we store them in the test cases directly. And here we see one of the issues that we're struggling with, the spaces in the names, and can you parse this? And this is probably going to move forward to having single quotes around here so that we can handle names with spaces and punctuation and other things like that. So that it's more easily parsed, context-free grammar, so that you don't have to know the set of variables. Okay, but these are things that are evolving in the field language, and I'm fairly confident these are going to be addressed in the long term. But we have tests that test both with and without, or we will have tests both with and without when the 1.2 version of the spec comes out. So then the test itself looks like this. It's really pretty simple. Here you have the name of the model that's being tested. And I mentioned that, so of course, the test itself has the same name as well. But it specifies here the DMN model. And here's the labels. So we can have as many labels as you want. These are compliance. This compliance level 2 would allow you to select all the tests that are level 2 compliance. And this is about literal expressions. So there could be any number of groupings of these, quite straightforward to do. And then here's the test case, and this is test number 1. And we have the value John Doe that goes in here, and the expected value that comes out is hello, John Doe. No big surprise. So if I wanted to add a new test to this, I'd take this block here and copy it and make this test number 2, and I would put in some other values in here. Okay, so a good test, I should be testing all those. Oh, not the ampersand, because that's a XML thing. And I'd expect the output to be, those like that. So now I've got test number 2. And the whole idea is that I mentioned that we haven't invented any data types here. The way that this string is expressed, well, if this was a number, the way the number is expressed is just as if a user had typed it into a DMN model. Okay, DMN already tells you how to express numbers and how to read numbers, so we're just using that same thing here. So it really is just the text in the XML here. You then have a runner, and the runner reads the DMN model, submits it to the engine. It reads these text files, it pulls the input, sends the inputs in, gets the outputs out, compares to the expected output. It's really, really simple and really, really useful. Because what we have is now a set of tests of increasing sophistication. So here's one, which is a decision table. So here you're seeing 3 input variables, age, risk, is affordable. And then output, and notice the output is a structured value, approval status and approval rate, like that. And so I won't show you the DMN model for that because it's, it's actually not that bad, but this is it. But what's more important is the test case. So again, here you have age coming in as value 18. Risk category medium, is affordable true, and then here's the expected output, and the expected has 2 components. It has approved, status approved, and rate standard, like that. So we can now extend this and automatically run and test all of the models, all of the implementations that are out there. Then the output, the test results, like I say, this is not a real sexy demo, but it doesn't get any sexier, believe me. And what I like to say is that the results I have today are mostly bogus. Okay, they're fake results for the demo. We are at the point where we're putting the real site out there, but I'll show you what the site looks like. But the CSV file, oh, I didn't really want to bring it up in Excel. Let me bring it up in the text editor. It's very simple. It has the folder that it came from, and the test set that it came from, and the test case, and the test number. And you can have here success, failure, or skipped. And you'll also have the ability to put a comment after this. So if a vendor is skipping a certain number of tests, you can explain why it's being skipped so that something comes through to the website. And this is folded into a website, which looks like this. And what we want to do is we want to highlight all the vendors that are participating here and show, how active they are and when they've submitted their results. And then allow for the users the ability to well, you get a little bit of high-level overview here on how well that went, but we can drill down into the details. And so here we see the results according to category, and we'll be expanding the categories and extending the categories as needed by the users. And we can then drill down into one of these categories, like for example, what's one that has a few here? Feel arithmetic. And so here we get all the details on the actual tests. And for this particular, this is a beta run, for this particular run, what passed, what failed, and those sorts of things. Yeah, so that's it. I mean, as we went through this, we got a tremendous benefit from the cross-fertilization. You read a spec, and depending on your background, you'll read and you'll understand it a certain way. Somebody else reads it and understands it a different way. And I don't know how many times we ran into this, and Bruce and Edson can talk about this, and Denis as well, where they thought they understood it, we brought the engines together, and all of a sudden there was a misunderstanding. And we had to work through that. And this actually was, this makes both sides much stronger out of this, to really understand, where are your hidden, where are your blind sites, and this exposes them and allows you to make sure that everything is correct up and down. So there's a real side benefit to vendors who participate in this. The first time you come into here, and I know we have at this point 52 tests. I want to expand that. I've been talking about 1,000 tests. That's really where I want to be. But the first few tests are the hardest, because those are the ones that immediately expose the little differences in the understandings. And these are the reasons why executing running code is better than a written spec. because it is much more complete and it includes all those details, and you really have to see it. And we'll be filling these in with those tests that cover those very, those edge cases and those boundary conditions. There's also what I call an ulterior motive for vendors to join this effort, and that is that if you already, anybody who's implemented a DMN execution engine, they already have test suites. Right? You have to. I mean, right? If you're delivering a product, you have to have a set of tests that your engine runs successfully and gets correct results. So if you're in that position, it's to your advantage to donate those tests to the TCK. Because now you're giving a bunch of tests which already pass on your engine, and you're going to have to make sure that every other engine passes those tests. Okay? So whether you see that as nefarious or kind-hearted, it really is an advantage to participate in the TCK. Now, Edson touched a little bit upon error conditions, and that's an area which we haven't really explored, but I think we need to, because there's different kinds of errors that can come out. There can be syntactic errors in the files themselves or in the expressions themselves. I'm not suggesting that we standardize exactly the error message that comes out, but I do think that if there is an error situation, I think all engines should produce an error if it's an invalid situation, if you know what I mean. So I think we have some ways to go, but like I say, I want to build this forward to having 1,000 tests. I really want to recognize Edson in the back as doing all the heavy lifting on all of this. He did an implementation. He created most of the files you see there, as well as Bruce, who was instrumental in this. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not really a decision expert. There are many decision experts, Gary and Larry and Denis. I'd like to recognize Denis' effort with Trisotech, also supporting all of this stuff and making it work. And these guys have been in weekly meetings with me, as well as Camundo. We had Falco, and we had Jacob from Open Rules. These people have been meeting weekly to make this come about, and I think we have something real here. It really works today. You can use this to test. It's a good test, and it's expandable going forward in the future. So that's how I want to end it. I want to thank all of those people for getting us to where we are today. Are there any questions?